All right, I guess we'll get started. Welcome to the 2026 report release for the State of the City's annual research report. This report is designed to explore and explicate the things that mayors are thinking about their cities in this year. And we will start, because I am the Director of Research here at National League of Cities. We will start with a quick review of how we collected these data. For the entire decade plus that we have been collecting data on these for this report, we have used published State of the City's addresses where mayors publish them online. But in the last couple of years, we've also sent surveys to our members. NLC represents all of the nearly 20,000 cities, towns, and villages in America. And we have about 3,000 member cities. We ask the mayors of those cities to tell us in a survey how they think their cities are doing and what their priorities are for the year as well. And then we combine these two pieces of data, and you'll see that throughout the report where we try to balance what we see in the speeches as well as what we see from our members in the survey. And in the report, you'll also see a really nice comparison. We use X, formerly known as Twitter, to explore how residents are engaging with their representatives at the local level on these particular issues. So I am sitting here with Mayor Norton and Mayor Scott, and we will ask them to give us some comments and thoughts as we get to the end. I'm going to cover the findings of the report quickly, and then we'll dig into each topic with our mayors here, and I will do a brief intro of them when we get to that point. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the top 5 priorities. These generally are pretty similar year to year, although the order or the rank of the priorities changes year to year. The top priority is economic development. And one of the things I will talk a little bit about as we move forward is the fact that economic development is often, you hear downtown revitalization. It means a lot more than that, particularly this year to our mayors. Now, we're going to dig into the other top priorities as well, but I'm going to take you through each one little by little. Our first one is economic development. And one of the important things you see here is that 60% of our mayors mentioned attracting businesses. Now, that could be seen as downtown revitalization, but it's also things like helping legacy businesses stay afloat as their owners are nearing retirement. It's helping small businesses identify ways to diversify and adapt to the AI environment. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into economic and workforce development. And one of the really neat things that you're going to see throughout the report is the depth with which mayors are thinking about this. And you're going to see things like childcare access or transit access and housing access as components to economic and workforce development. And okay, we do not have a podium here today. I am now, okay. The other pieces that we see our mayors talking about, as I just mentioned, are up here on this graph. And now we're going to talk a little bit about housing. And we're starting, this is infrastructure broadly. We're going to start with housing. The reason we're starting with housing, as you all know, is it is a huge issue for our country today. And in fact, we are hopeful. I have not gotten the update yet. We are anticipating that the Road to Housing Act will be signed by the president. It has not been at this point. It will become law tonight. So time for a moment of celebration. It was a huge bipartisan bill, and we are really excited about it. But one of the things you'll see up here is, and this is partly why this is so important, is that the ARPA and IIJA bills, which allow direct funding to cities, have had ARPA ends at the end of 2026, and IIJA is in its later years. this means that cities are trying to figure out alternative ways and new ways to fund the infrastructure demands of their cities. One of those demands includes housing. And what we see here is that nearly 3/4 of our mayors across all types of data said that housing supply and housing affordability were top priorities for them. So this is actually a really nice moment in time where our federal and local policies are aligning. And we ask our mayors, and you'll see more detail about this in the report, about what mayors are doing. So they need federal support, but what else can they do at the local level? And I want to lift up public-private partnerships, which are particularly important as federal funds disappear, and also are particularly important as mayors are investing in economic development and bringing new businesses to town and figuring out how to work with those businesses to make sure that the businesses are contributing to the community as well as the community to the business. Now, another component of infrastructure that we are all thinking a lot about is climate resilience. And only about half of our mayors reported feeling ready and resilient for emergency preparedness or disasters. This is an area that NLC is working to provide more support on for our members, but also an area that we need to think about seriously at the federal level. And next to climate resilience is public health and safety. And you'll notice on this slide that one of the things that shows up as a challenge is emergency preparedness. Another piece of public health and safety that I think is particularly interesting this year is we hear our mayors talking about them together. Mayors are leading the charge and saying these are interrelated issues. Mental health, substance abuse, housing stability are all public safety concerns and public health concerns. And I'm looking forward to hearing our panelists talk a little bit about some of the ways that they are innovating and thinking about how to address these as interrelated concerns instead of separate issues. The final piece, which is our budget and management. And this is always on our top priorities. This is what our mayors do. Our mayors are thinking about the impending end of federal funding that was very flexible. It doesn't mean all federal funding is gone, but there are going to be some serious changes in federal funding direct to cities over the next year. And our mayors are trying to think about what this looks like for them. Another key component for our mayors is the potential preemptions around what taxes cities are allowed to collect. And this is something our state municipal leagues are paying a lot of attention to at the state level. It could have some serious impacts on municipal revenue and how municipalities manage their expenses. So we are watching that closely. And the other piece you'll see here, this is no surprise to anyone in this room, the top tool that mayors are using to manage these budget concerns is strategic planning and making sure that the strategic plan and the municipal priorities are aligned. Now, there's one more piece that we will talk about today that I'm going to do a teaser for before I turn to our panelists, which is civility. And while we did not ask questions about civility on our State of the Cities survey, we have a number of member surveys over the last 2 years that talk about the concerns and needs for civility in all levels of government. And we will get a chance to hear from our panelists on that. And with that, I'm going to turn to the panelists and do a quick intro and then ask them a handful of questions on these topics. So we have Mayor Norton here with us from Rochester, Minnesota. She served in the state legislature before she was mayor, and she's been mayor for almost a decade. She's the first female mayor of Rochester, and am I allowed to say that she will be ending her time as mayor at the end of this year? We will be disappointed to lose her, but looking forward to seeing who her successor is. And Mayor Scott from Center Point, Alabama, is a man who came to with public service after many years in the public-private sector, which brings a really interesting perspective to all of these public-private partnerships. And he is the president of our NBC Leo constituency group and has been serving as mayor since 2020, if I'm correct, and was in the city council before.
That's right.
So, mayors, I'm going to actually start with the civility piece since it is top of mind. And I'm going to start with a question. Mayor Norton, do you want to tell us about the study from Harvard and what Rochester is doing around civility and community engagement?
Sure. As many of you know, a lot of research has been done in recent years about civility, about public comments, about the impact of that kind of behavior, particularly on people of color and women. It was particularly brutal post-pandemic in my community, and I faced, many years of abuse. But what happened as a result of that was the city of Rochester agreed with me that we were seeing not just the effect on the elected officials, but the comments and the effects were affecting our community members as well. And it was actually stopping dialogue when people knew that if they said something, they would be attacked. So Harvard looked at Rochester and what we decided to do, which is we turned off public comments on our Facebook pages, both mine personally, my mayor's page, as well as our city's page. And what we did, there was a lot of talk about you can't block people, you can't do any of that as an elected official, but you don't have to create a place for dialogue on your own pages. And so our city administration, and there's a little criticism that it wasn't the council that decided, but they have their own pages and they can choose what they want to do personally. But the city and the mayor's page turned off those comments 2 years ago, and it has made a huge difference in people being willing to go look at things. The one thing I will warn you about if you choose to do this is you do, because of algorithms, you do lose a little bit of the contact because the algorithm is meant to pick up on the discord and the hatred, frankly, that happens, and then it spreads it. And if you don't have that happening, it does affect your outcome. But we are now a case study, and it's being done right now at Harvard this summer. And it'll be really interesting to see how the other mayors, because it's in the mayor's cohort, how they respond to that and what happens with it.
Wonderful. And Mayor Scott, you're in a much smaller community.
Right.
Do you want to talk to us about the ways that you engage with your residents and how, this is 2026, civility is an issue. How do you see it happening, or in good or bad ways, in your community?
Well, we don't have as big of an issue being a smaller city and actually having a older population. A lot of our seniors, aren't keyboard warriors at this point. I am a, pretty techie guy, so I handle a lot of our Facebook pages, a lot of my personal pages, and I'm just open. So insults don't really bother me so much. If you have a question, any questions that's posted on our city page or my personal page, I will answer publicly and just make sure that the dialogue is always there. So it tends to get a pretty good, response and feedback. And if it's, something a little bit brutal, I try not to be petty or fire back, and then it kind of just dies away. So you do have to have a, thick skin to kind of deal with it, though.
Thank you both. So we're going to go back up to the top to our top priority for mayors, which was economic development. And we remember that we said 60% of our mayors said attracting businesses was one of their top priorities. What are some economic challenges that are in your city, and how are you tackling them? Mayor Norton, do you want to talk to us about the Destination Medical Center?
Yes, a number of years ago, we started a program with the state legislature. And again, we talk about public-private partnerships. This was our largest employer in our city is Mayo Clinic. They employ 50,000 people. And it's the state's largest employer as well. And they went to the legislature and said, we want to grow and we want to keep Minnesota, because they have other branches around the country in Florida and Arizona. We want to keep Minnesota as our hub, but we need some support in order to do that, because if we grow, we need to make sure the city can grow around us. And we didn't have the revenue to do that. So the state was asked to put in some funds. So the state put in $385 million. The city had to put in 128, and the county puts in a tiny bit. And so we had roughly $585 million to do downtown redevelopment, and it had to focus on economic development. So that partnership allowed Mayo Clinic. So we started doing some, I guess, upgrades of our systems, because when you grow as a community, you all know this, your water pipes don't necessarily grow with you. You have to dig down and take them out and make them larger, because your water systems only work as well as your smallest pipe. And we had those. So this allowed us to dig down, go under the roads, fix the roads, replace them, do some downtown redevelopment. At the same time, we built out our city. So we're putting in a bus rapid transit line, and this funding, this relationship with the state has allowed us to support Mayo's growth. And they announced 2 years ago a $5 billion expansion of their campus in our downtown. So they are growing now, we are growing now. And I will tell you, we have two challenges with that. One is there's a ton of construction in Rochester. And how do we manage that and support our businesses throughout? Because your businesses struggle when people can't get to them. So we have that challenge going on, as well as we grow and we recruit. DMC also has business recruitment as part of it. As we recruit new medical aligned businesses in our community, whether it be clinical trials or whatever it is, when you bring them there, how do you support the staffing they need in order to continue to stay in our city and not go to the East or West Coast, which is what often happens when new discoveries happen in med tech or medicine. The business starts in our community, but then it goes to one of the coasts. And how do we keep them there? And that's training. And so we're focusing right now on our universities and our technical colleges training the people that live in our community and recruit people in to go to school in our communities so that the jobs are filled. So a lot going on.
A lot going on there. And Mayor Scott, you and I talked a bit about small business support and some of the ways that you're exploring that and trying to support your small businesses. And I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So, being a small bedroom community, we're right next to Birmingham, which is a larger community. So a lot of our, employment workforce goes over to Birmingham. Jefferson County is the largest county in the state, and UAB, they offer a lot of jobs, but small cities run on your local businesses, your small businesses, those people that decided to get up in the morning and say, I don't want to go to work for somebody else, I want to work for myself. So what we did was we took some of our ARPA funding and allocated that to economic development. So we gave grants for facade improvements for brick and mortar businesses. After COVID, things took a little bit of time to get back on their wheels, so to speak. And we've been successful in giving out quite a few grants and making smaller businesses more apt to come to our city and start up there. So, you want to keep that traffic going. We want to give people a reason to stop when driving through our city. There's a state highway that goes directly through Center Point. So on the way home, we want you to grab some groceries or grab some gas or something, just, pull off and continue to support.
Awesome. You both, in your economic development comments, mentioned infrastructure. So we're going to turn to infrastructure and talk a little bit more about that. Mayor Norton, you talked about like the water and sewer systems. What are some of the other challenges you're seeing with regard to infrastructure in your city? And we'll talk about housing specifically in a moment.
Okay. So yeah, there are a lot of challenges when a city grows, and our city's been growing quite quickly over the last 20 years in particular. So as we try to do infill, that's been the big push. So we're doing a lot of infill development. But even as you add infill, then that affects how much your water and your utilities can get further out. So we're focusing on new apartments, which we haven't had a lot of high-rise apartments in our downtown area. We are certainly seeing those being developed, and that's a good thing. But we still have to build that water structure out. So a lot of it is going to the state legislature, asking for bonding funds in order to do that, going to the federal government, trying to get some federal funds, which are shrinking, and it makes it hard. And I would say one of the other challenges is as we develop these programs, whether it be our bus rapid transit, transit's been a struggle post-pandemic. As we try to grow that back, how do you do that in a time of shrinking funds, or at a time when you fund a project and because of what's happening in the economy right now, it suddenly costs 10 million more than you budgeted for. And we are seeing that time and time again in our community. It's a real struggle because the funds, you've gotten your funds, you've been allocated the funds, and suddenly you can't finish the project. So we are struggling with that. And I think other cities are as well. I see head nodding, so I know I'm not the only one.
Mayor Scott, what about you?
We, again, and I'm so blessed to have a smaller city. I listened. She said 380 million at one point. No, that's like 20 years for us. So, but of course, our state highway that goes through our city, we want to make sure that people aren't tearing their tires up, going back and forth. So it makes it a little bit more pleasing when you can drive through a city and traffic's not so bad that you want to avoid that city. So infrastructure wise, our main goal, and we've had a lot of help, shout out to NLC with their hubs when it comes to thriving communities, connected communities, safe streets and roads for all. That is a grant that we apply for. And we have one more, the Southern Cities Economic Initiative. So these are things that NLC has helped us with to help our community continue to grow and stay connected. And, our main thing, lights, and everybody want to be able to see at night, want to be able to see pedestrians at night. Pedestrian safety is huge when it comes to infrastructure improvements and everything. So you have to account. We're only 24 years old as a city. We were unincorporated for majority of our lifetime. So, I'm the second mayor in the city's history. So we do have a lot of building to do, a lot of work, and talks with the county and talks with the state and talks with the federal government. So that cooperation is needed all the way around for us. It's very important that we have those networks.
Awesome. And Mayor Scott, despite the fact that you're only a few decades old,
Right.
The city, you and I talked a bit about the aging housing infrastructure and your aging residents. Do you want to talk a little bit about the needs you're seeing from your residents with regard to aging in place?
Right. Yeah. It gets harder to cut your grass the older you get, if your kids don't live here. So a lot of the things we're seeing is our older population needing that assistance, needing, walking to the grocery store is not, and it gets hot in the South. I'll just say that. So you don't want to see your grandma pushing the cart to the grocery store. So, transportation. We have a thriving senior center where we feed our seniors every day. We try to help them out as much as possible. And these are things that, as a small city, it's a little bit more personable to me, having a mother that's 82. I just told her age. She's 29. I'm sorry. Having parents that are older.
So much trouble.
Yeah. Having parents that are older, you don't want to see your mom in that position. And I would hate to see anybody else's mom or grandmom in that position. So making sure that we're providing resources for home improvements. Alabama does a good job at providing electrical improvements, weatherization for different things, roof repair. So, that is a very important segment of our population. We have to make sure that we are looking out for them. We may not be able to do everything for them, but there are resources. And again, at different levels of government, cities, small cities like us need that cooperation and that funding to help us continue to grow.
Mayor Norton, what about you and the housing challenges you're facing at the moment?
Well, one of the things I think that's so interesting about the results of the survey and the things we all face as city council people and mayors is that we all are facing the same problems, whether it be a small town and I'm a mid-sized city, 125,000. We're all facing those same issues. So for Rochester, we had a couple things happening. Post 2008, we weren't having homes being built. The needs were growing and our city was growing, and then people were coming to town having nowhere to live. And fortunately, we have some bedroom communities that were able to house people, but sometimes people want to live closer to work. We had to deal with this issue. So two things happened. One, we redid our Unified Development Code. It took 10 years. They had been working on it before I was mayor. We finally passed it. That has really helped us move up construction because we set it so that you don't have to come to the city council for everything. As long as you follow these rules that we put in place, the staff are allowed to approve projects. And only if you vary, from that in one way or another, and there are certain other circumstances, do you have to come before the city council. So it has sped up the process for developers, which has been huge. And it's more modern. It's a modernized code, which we very much needed to do to make it easier for people to build and have the kind of homes and businesses and apartments that they want. So that's one thing. The other thing I would say is we did a study. We did the Maxfield study. I had a couple numbers here. So as part of that, we started a coalition. So we have a coalition of folks in town. The city puts in money, the county puts in money, Mayo Clinic puts in money into this nonprofit at our Rochester Area Foundation called the Housing Coalition. And since 2020, we've had $20 million that was put into that fund, and we've used it to create 1,154 homes for folks just through that project. And sometimes, and it's a variety of different things. Sometimes it's saving an apartment building that was going to be closed down, but we were able to create naturally affordable housing because of that. Sometimes it's building really new ownership townhomes that really hadn't been built, condos for a while. Those had kind of died out. And now we've started recreating these smaller niche communities. Sometimes it's apartments that are affordable, and affordability is something we just hear, and I'm sure, Mayor, you'll say the same thing time and time again. It costs so much to build the new homes now that by the time they're done being built, nobody can afford them. The one thing and the argument I think to keep in mind for that is it does sometimes allow people to move up and free up some of the older homes in your community for other people. And so I think always to keep that in mind as part of the argument. We need houses at every price point, And so those are some of the things that we've done. That Housing Coalition has been a lifesaver for us.
Awesome. So our last topic is public health and public safety, and then we will take a couple questions from the audience. I'm going to have Mayor Scott start and give Mayor Norton a chance to take a moment. Mayor Scott, do you want to talk to us about public health and public safety in your town? I've heard you mention a couple of things as we've been sitting here. One is the health and safety of your aging residents, and another was pedestrian safety. You're welcome to expand on those or go a different direction.
Okay, so I'll circle back around to those definitely, but again, we were unincorporated for a very long time, so we never had a police department, being 24 years old. One of the things I'm very excited about and proud of is that we just hired our first chief of police for our public safety department. So that is something we wanted to get off the ground. Public safety is a priority for our particular city, and I know there's a lot of different priorities and mayors may have them in different places, but public safety for us was right up at the top. So this gives us the opportunity to start from the ground and build up in a way that is beneficial to every resident. We wanted to make sure that if you got a call about a dog, that somebody's coming, right away. Sometimes the county can get bogged down. We're in the largest county in Alabama, so we contract with the sheriffs, but we're slowly trying to create an environment where we built in mental health, we built in the technology aspects for the department, and most important for me is the customer service of the police department and the ability to serve. I think as elected officials, that's our main goal. That's our at ground level, our goal is to serve our public and those that elected us. So this was one of the things that was highly requested and talked about during campaigning, and we're glad to get that piece rolling. And I think she's going to be an excellent chief for us.
Did I hear she?
She, yes. Yes. She is our first chief, and she's also the first Black chief of the city of Center Point. So we're very excited to have her and look forward to continuing to grow that. But again, mental health is a big thing. Opioid epidemic is a big thing that we're working with a couple of organizations right now, trying to create those resources. As a small town, you may not be able to build a facility that handles that, but we're right next door to Birmingham.
Mhm.
County has a lot of resources. So again, those relationships help all of us, you know, even not just the big city in the middle, but all the little suburbs around us. Our senior population, you know, at best, they just want to be in their homes and be able to watch the soaps or Price is Right or whatever's on. And we want to make that as safe as possible for them. So we're excited about it. We think Centerpoint's headed in the right direction. So
That's awesome. Mayor Norton.
So I'm going to talk just a little bit about our community policing. So I became mayor and we'd hired a new police chief, the mayor prior to. So I didn't have anything to do with the hire, but we've worked together pretty well. He was very dedicated to wanting to do community policing in our city. So we created something called Safe City Nights. We host in each ward of the city, we host events where the police come out and they host many, many booths, but all of it's about public safety. We're there, it's one-on-one. The police department, a good percent of them come to the event as well as elected officials. And so it was building the relationships. We did a New Americans training. So we have a lot of immigrants in our community, a lot of new immigrants in our community. So there's an opportunity for them to sit down with the police department, ask questions, get to know them, learn a little bit about it. And so to delve into a little bit of a more sensitive topic, Rochester's in Minnesota. I'm not the one from New York. So from Minnesota. And Minnesota was a target for some pretty significant ICE activity. And my community, and still is, and my community is not, immune to that. We also had that happening. And what has happened as a result of that is that it has dampened the trust in our police department by a large portion of our communities. And so we are having to work extra hard right now to continue to say, you can go to the police. They are a safe place to go. They do not work with ICE. That's a decision that we made years ago, long before my time, and we continue that position. If you need help, you need to call for help and not be afraid to contact your police department. That is just, so we have to rebuild trust. So we're in a difficult place right now, rebuilding relationships because of what has happened in the country with our police, and they are committed to doing that. But it's been a challenge. And the other piece that we're dealing with, and many of you are too, is since about 2018, the population of the homeless in communities, large and small, has increased. Part of it has been too, as the mayor mentioned, chemical dependency, but mental health is also a part of that. And so we are trying as a community to deal with, we've used some models that are out there. Houston's model for dealing with homeless has been very successful. We're trying to mirror that where it's hands-on. We've provided shelters. We don't want police to be the one dealing with our homeless population. We want people who are willing to provide supports and help, not incarceration, right? So we're working really hard, and the police are part of that discussion to make sure that we're dealing with the people in the most appropriate way. So that's another challenge, but I think that Houston model has been very helpful in knowing who's homeless in your community, knowing what services they need, and looking around at your nonprofit population to say, which one of you is going to provide John with the services that John needs, makes a difference, because John has a name and John's a person with real needs, and everyone knows John, and we're all working together to help him. So a couple things.
Thank you. So those are the end of my questions. I am going to turn to the audience and invite you all to ask a couple questions here. We have about 15 minutes, maybe even a little longer. We do have a roving mic. Beautiful. So please go ahead and raise your hand and speak into the mic. We've got a question over here.
Hi, good morning to both mayors. This question is for Mayor Norton. You mentioned the housing coalition, and the number of homes you all were able to provide inside of your community. I know you mentioned getting renovating some places that may have been aged, but do you operate in a way that a Habitat for Humanity would operate? Or how are you getting these houses built or these buildings renovated for housing?
It's a mix of opportunities. So we have state programs, so we take advantage of those state programs. We are braiding and blending funds. We do have a Habitat for Humanity in our community, and they're working like parallel to this. They're not a part of the coalition, which is, you know, a little concerning to me. I don't know why, but our Habitat for Humanity organization has really struggled over the last 8 or 10 years. A lot of new directors keep coming in, which is very frustrating because they do an excellent, and I participate in their Women Build program because I really love that. Yeah, so yes, but it is braiding and blending funds. We do housing where the city will purchase land that's available and the homes are built on the land trusts. Not everybody likes land trusts. People, I've heard actually that, well, you don't gain equity, and actually you do gain equity in your home, just not on the property value of the land. So that's been one of the options that we've done. But it's been creative financing and funding. And I know one of the first projects that happened was buying an apartment complex that was just failing. It was in horrible shape. It needed fixing up, and they decided to spend that money that they had been collecting from. And I'll just say it, one of the ways that the city provides funds is we have a sales, well, two ways. We have some sales tax money that we dedicate toward economic development and housing. So we use a little bit of that to put in this fund. The other thing we've done over the years is, oh, I lost my train of thought. When we provide housing for someone, apartment, like a developer comes in and wants to build a house, we say, are you going to do it for add low income housing in there, mixed use, mixed income housing? If they say no, we keep a certain percent of any TIF that they ask for in a fund, and that goes into their. Now, it's a great idea. It takes a long time, just to be aware. It takes a long time to build up that fund, but because we're having so much development right now, that little bit goes into that fund every time. And then we're able to reuse that money and invest it in apartments and housing.
And this is why we do this, is we learn from each other. Do we have another question from the audience? Of course we do. Thank you. We've got one here and one here. Beautiful.
Great. Thank you both for the presentation, and thank you, Christy, for moderating. My question's around balancing the budget during these fiscal times. I mean, we all know that the national trend from every city, big, small, medium size, is that the revenues are just not matching with the expenses. Everything's very expensive, healthcare, building, and a variety of things. But with the property taxes and perhaps commercial real estate taxes have decreased due to the downtown vacancies. So how are you doing more with less, and how are you balancing that, and what's your thinking? Thank you.
Well, you know, our annual budget's right at about $8 million. So, and our city, our previous administrations from the time we were founded did a very good job of being conservative with spending and funds. So we've never had an issue where we were in the red, or, you know, at the end of the year, we may have had to kind of transfer some savings in to keep up. But so far, we've been doing really, really good when it comes to our revenues. We thrived over COVID, honestly, just being a suburb that had grocery stores and gas stations. So you didn't have to drive to the next largest city to get the things you needed. And then the delivery service. Alabama has a simple sales tax, which is your online purchases. And so for each online purchase, they collect the state collects the tax. A certain amount goes to the education fund, but then a certain amount gets divided across all of the municipalities. And there's an argument right now where the larger city wants more, you know, because a lot of the sales may originate from them, but you know, it's been amazing for our city to just help keep us right above that level where we're struggling, you know, for air and everything. So we try to be as conservative. We're in budget season right now. We have 4 new council members, and everybody wants to do projects. You know, everybody, you ran on a particular topic, you want to see that particular topic. So our goal is to try to accommodate each council member. And I know that's most people think that immediately the mayor and the council are supposed to be a separate group where they argue back and forth, and I try not to do that. I understand that all of us want the best for our communities. We may have different routes that we want to take to get to it, but as long as long as we all understand each other that we don't want to see any part of our community suffer, we're able to sit down and talk it out and figure out a way that you can still have this done, but the city can maintain its keep its head above water, so to speak.
Mayor Scott, I'm going to dig a little deeper.
Mhm.
You've got a new police chief.
Yes.
You just said you've been able to keep your head above water. That does not sound like you're swimming.
It can be tough in
How
some
did-
cases, yeah.
How did you find the funding to create a police chief line?
So we have, your public safety budget is usually separated, and we have been paying for county deputies on contract at about $500,000 a year.
Okay.
So we're, slowly going to kind of pull away from that and put that money back into our officers that we want to hire. Actually, you could probably get a 2-for-1 based on what we pay the county versus what we could pay a police officer, but also the cops grant. We're going to depend just on that startup money, capital improvement funds. We're going to have to build a police station, and it may come down to where we have to loan some money, borrow some money just to complete our station. But we want to make sure that it's done the right way, and we want to be very conservative about it. And everybody knows police departments don't make money, so we're not going out and we're not going to write 1 million tickets to try to make up budget. But it's more of a public service need. We want to keep that collaboration with the county. We want to keep a hybrid. You take care of the main throughway. I just want to make sure that my residents get service when they need it. So I don't want them to wait 2 hours. I want somebody over there to check out whatever that issue may be. And even if it's de-escalation, that's where we want to focus that service.
Awesome. Thank you.
So our community's larger, but we still have the same budget balancing challenges that you all do every single year. I would say, our police take a significant portion, police, fire and emergencies, and just, like a unique thing about my community, we have Mayo Clinic there, we have patients from all over the world, we have people that move there because they have bad health. So having emergency and medical people available all the time is a must in our community, so that we do probably spend a little bit more than other communities might in that EMT area. And we have had challenges. Even we are a growing community, and that does give you the advantage of having, when a new person moves in, it's more taxes, which means maybe you don't have to raise the levy quite so much, but you also have to provide more services. So it's a very delicate balance. We have a levy that helps fund the city, and we have had to have increases in the levy. I think last year it was 6 or 8% of the levy. And of course, people think that's 6 or 8% of their taxes. So we're constantly fighting the messaging that no, we're not raising your taxes 6 or 8%, just the little bit of levy that you have for the city. And it ends up being $25 or $50 a year for a person. And that's, for some, that's not insignificant. The challenge we're having, and I don't know why it's happening as quickly and as fast as it is. And if it's unique to us, I don't think it is. How much it costs to buy a house has literally doubled in the last 5 or 10 years. It is ridiculous, the cost of housing, property taxes for businesses. And because Mayo's growing and because downtown is becoming, those properties are valuable, the property tax values, which we don't control as a city, the county assessor does, makes those go up. And that's a real challenge. How do you keep those down enough that people can move into your town and open a business and be able to afford a house? So, and how do we as a city make sure we can provide taxes to replace the roads when they get potholes in them without, raising taxes? So we don't have a magic formula, but we balance our budget every year. We have a AAA bond rating as a city for our business model. So we do a good job at it. But are people happy all the time? No, the anti-tax folks are after us every single year. And there was one year, and that was 2020 or 2021 probably, where we had, during the pandemic, where we knew all of our businesses were hurting, all of our people were hurting. We were hurting as a city, but we had a 0 tax increase that year. And we did not, when we as a city said, we're not laying anyone off. So that's what we used our ARPA funds, was to be able to maintain that during that time so that the city could continue to run properly. But yeah, it's a challenge. And
if you don't mind, I'll follow up with that, because right now we have and still one of the lowest property tax rates in our county. And we didn't even have property tax prior to 2017. So like I said, as a city, we're still growing. We're still trying to figure out, you know, at a 5 mil, you know, that's a pretty decent tax rate, where some of our cities on the other sides of town are at 0.27. And, you know, you're paying a lot of money in taxes, where Center Point is still a very livable city when it comes to property taxes. Even our income tax, our sales tax was 2% lower than everybody else around us. So we're slowly going through, you know, does this benefit us? And you don't want to hurt, taxes are not a good thing to be raising at any point, but especially now when things are so hard. You know, a lot of single moms are literally living in their cars at this point. So I'm very protective, and I get offended about my residents. So we don't want to be in your pockets as citizens, and I'm a citizen as well of the same city. So we understand government overreach, and, you know, we need money to do this, and this. We want you to live. We want you to have a good quality of life. And we're going to compromise as best we can to not keep putting a burden back on the taxpayers.
Thank you. We're going to do one more question, and two more. Okay, we'll do two more.
So I'm Commissioner Melissa Dunn from Lauderhill, Florida. Speaking of property taxes, in the state of Florida, the legislature, under the leadership of our governor, has passed legislation that will put on the ballot a measure to significantly cut property taxes in the state of Florida. And in my city, just to put it in context, our police budget alone is $35 million. And we collect for our general fund about $30 million from property taxes. And if this measure passes, 10 million of that will go away. So I'm curious, Mayor Norton, you mentioned that at one point you guys kind of faced some challenges of navigating with the property tax issue. How were you able to navigate that without laying staff off? I mean, right now, I have my budget meeting on Tuesday, and in this particular budget, we're going to be getting rid of 13 positions. And if this measure passes, that would impact our 28 budget, which is also the same year that the SNAP cuts will hit and the same year that the Medicaid cuts would hit. And in my city, we have the 9th largest SNAP population in the state of Florida. So a lot of challenges converging all at once. And I'm just curious, how do you navigate those compounded economic forces as you lead in your cities?
Wow. Yes. A couple things. We have a city manager who is loves budgets. I'm thankful she does. She loves working on the budget. And one of the things that she asks her staff to do is, what are the things that you think you need in your department? And so the departments meet and they have their wish list, and she has them, talk through all that. What things do you want to bring forward? And then what things are you willing to cut in your budget in order to make that happen? So she makes them work on both sides of the equation. And then when it gets down to the end, and we know we've had so much growth in our community, we have so much to spend, what are the priorities that the council has determined? Where are we going? What are the things we want? And so those items in the wish list are looked at based on the goals of the city council. And then she sits them down and says, let's talk about what, balancing the things that you say you need in your department. One thing that came forward last year was a snowplow. Of course, you don't have that in Florida, but when a snowplow breaks and they're huge and we have to have them in Minnesota, they're super expensive, or a bus or one of those things, millions of dollars. So how do you how do you balance? And then she helps work through with the department, what are the things they have to have and what are they willing to cut in order to make the best department and the best outcome for the residents that live in the community. So she does actually do a really nice job putting it back on them. And then she brings forward things that the council still, in fact, the snowplow they put off a year, said, can you wait one more year on that one? And so they said, well, we can, string it together for one more year. But those are the choices. And she has the staff look at it before they bring it forward to the council. So it makes it easier for the council to vote.
Mayor Scott, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, like once they cut it, it's hard to give somebody something and then take it back. And I think, at the local level, I think it's very important that states understand that when they do certain things, it makes it harder for us to operate in our cities. It's the SNAP benefits, going back to the states, and I can't believe states are actually questioning whether they are gonna continue it. I feel like at a minimum, people should have food and people should have shelter. And that's something that, even at the local level, we have to stand up for. And it helps us. We have a very active state league. So our state league, any legislation that comes through the state that may affect us as local towns and small cities, they are on it. They pick up the phone, they send out the emails, they tell us all, call your rep about this. This is gonna hurt your city. This is gonna pull away funding from your residents. So we try, and I'm on the board of directors for my state league as well. So it's, as elected officials, we're not just isolated to our town, but, I'm a very proud Alabama, native, born and raised. So I grew up 2 hours away from where I live. And the mayor there, I'm more than willing to go back and call him or point him in the direction of financing, because it's a small town, one traffic light. So, it doesn't affect me in Centerpoint, but, they don't have a Dollar General. And that's very rare if you're in the South to not see a Dollar General in a city. So, things like that, we as elected officials, we have to put ourselves in positions to be able to speak before these things actually hit us. And then we're trying to figure out, how do we recover from this? And, you don't want to, the state takes away your taxes and now you got to raise taxes. So now your residents are paying twice again. So it's just a matter of us sitting at the table together and figuring out the compromise. I hate that the fact that some state leaders or representatives forget at the local level, after making it to another level, and decide that it's okay to just cut these services and leave their residents out, because they are their residents just as much as they are my residents and your residents. So
We've got a
Quick
question here.
Yes. We are also working with our budget, and I'm from Longboat Key, Florida. And so I certainly have the same kind of issues with the property tax referendum that's coming, and most of the cities are just terrified about how to deal with that. But one of the things prior to that, we're dealing with our reserves, because we've had some terrible storms come through, and we've had to really dip into any reserves account that we had just to get back to operational roads and homes and things. So what as a rule of thumb, what reserves do you keep in your cities? And I was surprised that we heard from the city of Louisville CFO yesterday, who said like 5 weeks of reserves, and we're months in reserves and still don't think we have enough. So I'm just curious how you prepare for emergencies.
Well, we keep at least a year ago, it was $1 million in reserve, and probably a little bit more than that this year. I don't know how many months worth. I haven't asked that question. So yeah, keeping a healthy reserve for one-time expenses is an absolute must. And I think sometimes making sure that you use it for one-time expenses, as you say, for emergencies, is a challenge, because people want to scoop it into the budget and use it for something that's ongoing. And then that will strap you for the next 10 years, 20 years, whatever, so be really careful about what you're using it for. But Yeah, I don't know what percent that is, but it's a healthy amount. And I know last year we didn't use it all. And this year we're doing quite well not using it, but it's there in case that storm hits. We did have a tornado go through town in April, and so I'm sure some of it was used for that. Yeah.
I'm actually glad you said that about the dipping into the savings to cover other things. So, no, it's called savings. We're supposed to have it for emergencies. So our city has probably about 3.1 million that we have in reserves, and that's come a long ways. And as long as we're maintaining, we try not to go into that. I think a lot of people feel like, well, it's money, it should be spent, but it's enough for us. It's at least enough for 6 months without any other income coming in or any other help coming in. So we want to keep that where it is. And actually, the reason it is that high is because we had an insurance claim from a storm that came through and tore up one of the city municipal buildings. So instead of rebuilding that back, we turned it into a green space, and we took that money and put it in our reserves. So yeah, it's you want to make sure that in hard times, and like I said, we thrived in COVID, but a lot of people didn't. And you want to make sure that your people are paid, because they're the ones that are going to provide these services. I can go out and drag a branch off the street, but it's public works and those different departments that you want to make sure are paid.
Awesome. So we're going to take one more question here. And for those of you online, we will be following up with any of the questions you've put in the Q&A on Monday. You will receive an email from us. We have your registration, so we can grab your email and follow up on any questions you've left us there. Frank?
Good morning. Thank you so much, Mayor Scott and Mayor Norton, for your time and your insight today. My name is Frank Boykin. I'm a council member with the City of University Place. We have about 36,000 residents, and we're only 30 years old. I wanted to ask you, because you started the conversation with civility, and you talked about that impact and the subsequent Harvard study, and we moved through the expectation of the issues essentially being the same. They just change in terms of priority for municipalities. And then we move through public safety and public health. I am always invested in our residents and how they land, and recognize that we have to do not just more with less, but recognizing that federal funding is coming to very, very small numbers at best. We have an expectation in our city to move health in all policies as part of a way to help people land in ways in which we hope better positions them for what's ahead as we come alongside them, as we work with them. I wanted to ask you, I know your city's only 24 years of age, Mayor Scott, but I also wanted to ask, between you two, have you thought about that as a way of helping people be better for what we have ahead of us?
Well, I will just say, for me, health and well-being is the focus of our whole community, because we're medically based. So yes, I absolutely think that's a focus that we can and should have. One of the things, you started with that civility discussion, that I want to make sure I'm clear. So I'm appreciating the opportunity to be able to clarify this. We did turn off comments on our page, but we have worked with the National Civic League to replace that with other modes of communication. So we are doing many other things than we have done before to try to keep the community. In fact, I did a citywide, survey where it was an open-ended survey. What do you want Rochester to look like in the next 20 years, right? That was something that I invested in and got that feedback. So I just want to be clear. We do need to meet the needs of the constituents that live in our community. They need to be the one telling us what they want. And then it's our job often to make those really hard decisions about what's possible based on what our community wants. So I don't know if there's a more specific question that you wanted at the bottom of that, but it's always a balance for us as elected officials. How do you keep the health and well-being of the people that live in that community your priority, and still be able to give them, and in my community, I will tell you, they have a very high expectation for a high quality of life. We have more doctors per capita, more healthcare providers per capita than probably any city in the country. they have a high expectation of things they want. So we have a symphony and we have an art gallery and we have, all the things that big cities have, we have in our little town, because that's the expectation for the people that live there. And it's my job and it's our job as leaders to make sure that they get it.
Mayor
With
Scott, what do you
What we
think?
have.
Quality of life. I
Mhm.
think that's if you make that your focus and always realize that people come first, it makes it a little bit easier to make those really, really hard decisions sometimes. So, being a bedroom community, you want to make sure your housing stock is adequate. You want to make sure that playgrounds and parks are, things that people do when they get from work, because a lot of our residents travel into Jefferson County, Shelby County for their jobs. We got UAB, we got St. Vincent's, Brookwood Hospital. So I've been in the hospital and seen residents working behind desks, and you're the mayor, right? You're like, yep. And now I got to go ahead and get in this MRI machine, but take care of your mayor, please. But yeah, you want to make sure that as a community, you're providing those basic things. And every now and then, if you could have a festival or a carnival or something that gets the people out to commingle and meet each other, I think that makes for community. One of my mottos is building community one step at a time. Now, you can't do it all at once. Like, people expect the mayor to come in and just drop this, magic pixie dust on everything and it's all shiny. But no, every day there's trash, every day I have to drive up and down the parkway and fuss at people, or why isn't this intersection clean?
I pick
And
weeds. I
you pick
literally
weed, yeah.
weeds
So I've
along the parkway.
bought a chainsaw to cut up a tree out of a senior's yard.
Yeah.
And I grew up in the country, so I know how to use a chainsaw, but that was years ago. So I'm out there with a headband on cutting up a tree so that they can come and get it, only because they did not have the funding or the physical ability to do it. So as community, the title of mayor gives you a lot of access, but it's just being a good human being that makes the community what it is. So even without having that title as mayor, I would still be checking on my residents. I have a resident, and she starts her text off with, "Hey, Superman." And so that way I know she needs something. But she literally texted me because there was a hole in her yard. And I was like, well, it's off the right of way. There's not really a whole lot I can do about it, but I'll send somebody over to make sure it's not a deeper infrastructure issue. And if it's just an animal hole, you're gonna have to find somebody to fill it. But most people just want to be heard. You're on the phone for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and there's nothing you can do about it, that particular issue. But hey, I'll drive over a little bit later and look at it. And as long as you can refer them to another resource or somebody that can help them, a lot of times they're happy about that. So
On that note, we're going to close out. Thank you.